Hello everyone and welcome to Switch Up. In today's video we've got one of our Battle in the Backlog episodes for you. This is the series where I complete 10 games from my extensive backlog and then give you a recount of my experiences, a mini review of sorts if you will, ultimately letting you know whether I think it was worth the time and money. It's taken about 3 months to finish these 10 games and there's a variety of different genres included, so which games have I finished and was it worth it? Well, let's find out. The first game off the backlog was ToeJam and Earl Back in the Groove, which I picked up on sale about 90% off, so down to about £1.50 around mid-January. This sequel to the well-loved Mega Drive originals sticks very closely to the formula used in the first game as you make your way around a number of levels, avoiding enemies and looking for 10 missing parts of the duo's spaceship so they can get back home to Funkotron. You can pick up presents which will either help or hinder your progress, and the levels are randomly generated, although I believe there was an option in this version to use fixed levels instead. Whilst I did enjoy the game, I mean it is the classic ToeJam and Earl formula, I did have a few issues with it. Your characters walk very slowly, and whilst this was also true of the original, from what I remember at least, the enemies were fairly slow there too. Here the enemies move much quicker, making it very hard for you to avoid them if they spot you or you get too close, and unless you have a decent present, it's hard not to get caught and lose health. Lose all of your lives and you'll need to start again. I feel that a run option would have really helped with this issue and alleviated a lot of the frustration, especially near the end of the game. I'd recommend getting it on sale as I did, or if you have the Nintendo Switch Online package that offers Mega Drive games, then you could play the original on there instead. Another game I beat was Stitchy in Tooki Trouble. This is a 2D platformer that I got on sale around 75% off its normal price, and it has clearly taken quite heavy inspiration from the Donkey Kong Country games. It's not a very long game. I think there were 3 worlds with 10 levels each, the final level of each world being a boss, and there are 3 totem pole pieces in each level to try and find. Finding all of these within a world unlocks a final bonus level for each. As I said, it's taken many ideas from the Donkey Kong Country games. There are minecart levels and its own version of the barrels, and for the price I paid it was entertaining enough for the 2 hours it took to finish. It's flawed. The first 2 worlds are very easy, with the third one being a lot more frustrating in comparison. The hit detection is a little off at times too, and it feels a bit like a precursor to what could be a very good game next time round from the development team. I wouldn't recommend it at full price, but if it does go on another heavy sale and you like platformers, it will pass the time for an afternoon. Next was a choose your adventure text-based game called the Innsmouth Case. As the name implies, it is based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft, specifically Shadow over Innsmouth, and tells the tale of a detective hired to find a missing child with strange locals and cosmic threats awaiting you. It's written in quite a self-referential way, using a film noir style, but written as if the characters themselves are fully aware of exactly what that means and are happy to take on stereotypical roles, and I did enjoy seeing where the story went, with your decisions leading the character down various paths to some very sticky ends at times. There were about 30 endings to find, I believe, with you able to reload previous chapters after an ending, good or bad. The reload system could have been better. It would have been nice to have some sort of map of each branching path and where it led you, and as there was no definitively good ending as far as I could see, I kept going until I got the one that I was satisfied with, which took about 5 hours in total. I also finished Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge via the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection. This is a hack and slash game which continues the adventures of Ryu Hayabusa, and this third entry drives the dial up to 11 in terms of the action when compared to the other 2 games, which I feel were a little more measured. It's strange because of those 3 games, I think I actually like this one the least, albeit it is close, I like them all, but this is the one of the 3 games that I seem to replay the most. It takes you from the streets of London to deserts and jungles, and as long as you spread your play sessions out to avoid burnout on the repetitive nature of the action, it's a lot of fun to play. Graphically on the Switch, the resolution does take a hit at times as the game attempts to maintain 60 frames per second, something that it does a better job of in the first 2 games, as there are some drops here. Nonetheless, it was fun to do a few checkpoints a night in handheld mode, and I think the whole game took me about 9 hours to complete. The next one I completed with my daughter, and that's Pokemon Sword. She got this for Christmas and we played it through together, doing a gym every week or so of an evening before she went to bed, and having never played this one before, I have to say I really enjoyed it. This one is of course set in Galar, which is meant to be based on Britain, and it's always nice to see video games use Britain and England specifically as inspiration, obviously being an Englishman myself, and I also liked the new cinematic element that it brought to the gym battles with the arenas and the Dynamaxing. It was interesting because my daughter enjoyed this game a lot more than Let's Go Eevee, another Pokemon game she has, as she was able to battle wild Pokemon to level up a bit when needed, as opposed to having to catch the Pokemon for XP in the Let's Go games. She found the battling easier, which surprised me. I thought it would have been the other way round. She was rightfully very proud of herself when she finished it. It's the first big game she's ever completed, so that was lovely, and her winning team consisted of Cinderace, Noctowl, Boltund, Avalugg, Eldegoss and Gastrodon. Apologies if I've mispronounced any of those names, I don't watch any of the shows to get context on how to say them. I also finished Splatterhouse Wanpaku Graffiti, which is a part of the Namco collection, a physical release I showed in one of my recent physical games episodes. Link to that episode is in the top pinned comment. This is basically a chibi version of the Splatterhouse series that released for the Famicom back in the day, and has a fairly similar gameplay style of moving through levels and facing off against a boss before moving on to the next chapter. There are a few nice horror movie references, such as a boss with an alien's twist and levels based on settings of Friday the 13th and House on Haunted Hill. The bosses are quite similar to those in other Splatterhouse games in that generally they revolve around a lot of flying enemies or objects swooping in at you, which are quite difficult to dodge. I did find that it was a lot easier to do so here compared to the other games in the series, at least once you got used to the jumping, which is quite floaty, and the range of the weapon, which is quite short. It took about an hour and a half to finish, and I liked the system it had of giving you a number of enemies to kill in order to gain yourself an extra hit point, with the required number of enemies raising each time. I beat it on my last continue with just 1 hit point remaining. There are passwords if you run out of continues, but I don't know if you'd have lost all of the acquired extra points by using one, as thankfully I didn't have to find out. Then I completed Wunderling, which was a game that we were asked to make a sponsored video on, so I blitzed through the whole game in a day to get a feel for what it was all about, and to be fair, it was actually a really good game. It's basically a puzzle platformer where you play as a minion sent to stop the protagonist, and your character auto runs with you having to navigate obstacles and hazards in order to get to the end of each stage. There are a host of collectibles to get, most of which are off the beaten track, so there's some replayability there, plus it's just had a new update, hence the reason for the video we made, which adds further content. If you like your puzzle platformers, it's definitely worth a look. It took me about 7 hours, but it could easily take double that if you are looking to 100% it. I'll put a link to the full video in the top pinned comment if you do want the full story. This next one was a bit of an impulse buy. It's Goosebumps Dead of Night. Now, I reviewed the first Goosebumps game that released on the Switch, which was a point and click adventure game, and the physical version of that became quite hard to find over here. I didn't actually realise there was a second Goosebumps Switch game, but saw it on clearance in a local toy shop, and so picked it up, and it's actually a first person adventure game based on the Goosebumps movies from a few years back. You need to complete certain objectives whilst being hunted by some of the creatures from the Goosebumps universe and must hide to avoid being caught, as this is an instant game over. It's not a great game by any means, but I enjoyed playing it. It didn't outstay its welcome and mixed levels up enough to keep me invested. There was one part that was very frustrating though, owing to some quite poor design choices. There is a boss battle of sorts, and if you die here you need to watch a 30-second unskippable cutscene every time, plus dying in the first place also means a 40-second or so loading screen to sit through. Considering you can be caught off guard, which is an instant game over, you could actually get caught in this perpetual loop of frustration for quite a while. A decent little find which will probably disappear off store shelves as quickly as its predecessor, and another one off the backlog.
You can't stop me or my friends! Slappy summoned Murder the Clown. This is really bad. Listen, you have to hide somewhere small.
The 9th game I finished in this time wasn't one that I was expecting to complete. I was around Mark's house one Friday night and we ended up blitzing through the House of the Dead remake. We played through once and ran out of continues on the final boss, but finished it on a second attempt, so I would estimate it took about 2 hours to finish. My thoughts on the game: I liked the graphical overhaul. It was great to play a House of the Dead game again, especially as the first game was always the one that I'd played the least, and whilst it was a good amount of fun in co-op, the joycons are incredibly erratic and just cannot emulate a light gun well enough. There were times when your cursor would drift to the edge of the screen and no amount of calibration seemed to be able to keep the cursor centered, and the drops in frame rate during the game also meant your cursor could suddenly shoot across the screen. It's a shame, as there is still a fun experience underneath it all. The core gameplay has held up incredibly well, but if I got the urge to play an on-rail shooter again, I would probably boot up the Wii and play any number of the fantastic light gun games that were released on that system instead. And finally, the 10th game was Sherlock Holmes Crimes and Punishment. This was a game that I played for review, and I played and finished it before on the PS4, getting the Platinum Trophy in the process on that platform. It's a mystery game where you will be investigating crime scenes, gathering evidence, interviewing suspects and making deductions to solve 6 different cases. This was a game that I played through with my wife, me controlling for the most part and her offering suggestions, advice, etc, and we very much enjoyed playing through it. It's a little expensive considering it came out a number of years ago elsewhere, and performance does start to take a hit in the last couple of cases, but it's definitely worth checking out if you do enjoy mystery games. I'll put a link to the full review in the top pinned comment if you want any more information.
Before, on the Ripper case I believe, do you want to slit some more pigs' throats?
No.
Well, thank goodness for that.
I wish to impale one with a harpoon.
Wonderful.
So there you have it, another 10 games chalked off the list. I think there's a nice mixture of different genres there, as I said at the start. A few games that I took a punt on whilst on sale and enjoyed for the most part for the time I spent, and the money more specifically. And a few that I played through with family members too, which was nice. Have you played any of these games? If so, what did you think of them? Please do stick it all in the comment section below. And also, as I always say, please do put any games that you finished recently down there in the comments too. I love reading about what games other people play and whether it's worth the time. Another game I did finish, although it's not on the Switch, was Resident Evil Village, a game I very much enjoyed, which means still to this day the only game in the Resident Evil main series that I haven't finished is Resident Evil 6. I just cannot get through it every time I start it. I'm going to have to try and do that at some point. Don't forget, if you are looking for eShop credit, we do have eShop cards available to purchase via our website, switchup.gg. If you do purchase them that way, it does help the channel out, so anyone that does so is very much appreciated. Thank you. A quick thank you to our Patreons too for your continued support, of course, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.